Yo, what's on, your boy Ghost here. Today I'm bringing you guys another comparison video between the P90 and OTS. And I know that this video seems kind of random, but with this being the last week of Season 5, I kind of wanted to just make videos, or the remaining videos of this season, on guns that are pretty underrated and should be given a chance. And just like guns that people don't really talk about. And the P90 is one of those weapons that like rarely has ever gotten talked about in just Warzone's lifespan. And I really think it's a pretty good weapon. Definitely it could compete, especially when you guys like I'll break it down a little bit later in the video. Obviously that's what this video is for. But before we do get into it, I want to say if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Also let me know if there's any other guns that you guys want to see make comparison on. Like right now, like I'm not really like as so much trying to make videos of like the whole meta conversation. I'm just trying to like make videos on low-key weapons because, you know, it's the end of the season. It's not really going to be anything crazy unless like there's an update that happens in these next few days, which I highly doubt because they're probably just going to save it for the new season. But anyways, man, like I said, if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Let me know some suggestions down below, and let's get into this comparison. And here we have the recoil pattern for the P90, and this gun actually has pretty low recoil, and in terms of range, it's pretty solid. I would compare it to like the MP7, if you guys remember the MP7 from back in the day. That gun had crazy amount of range, and the P90 is pretty good at range. It's not at the level of a prime MP7, but it's, you know, I would say it competes up there. Definitely, I think, better than the OTS, considering the fact that it has slightly more damage over range and a slightly faster fire rate. But we're not going to get into this test right now. We're going to get into this test a little bit later. But yeah, man, this P90 is definitely one of those weapons, like I mentioned earlier, a gun that just has never really been talked about. And to be honest, I'm not going to sit here and say like it's a surprise that's never been talked about, but it's like a weapon that is pretty good, but it hasn't been good enough to be able to just outclass every other SMG at a time. Like, it's never gotten to be meta because, like, if you think of all the metas in the past, like, the P90 wasn't better than any of them. They had the potential to compete with them, but they weren't just outright better than them to the point where like, oh, yeah, this gun is meta and it's the best gun in the game. It's not to say that this gun isn't good. This gun is pretty good, but it's just never had a time in the game where it was just completely dominant and no gun was worth it over this weapon. Maybe in the future that'll change. I mean, maybe in Season 6 they'll decide to buff it a little bit. Modern Warfare guns don't tend to not really get changed though. Well, I mean, I don't know. They've been kind of doing a better job at it lately. I remember like when Cold War first came out, they never really like, you know, they stopped really paying attention to Modern Warfare weapons. But they've been slowly but surely giving more love to these weapons, and I hope the P90 receives a little bit like of a damage and stuff potentially, or maybe just, I don't know, just something that can help this gun be a little bit better, so it can finally get some sort of like foothold in the meta. Because again, this gun doesn't really have a place in it. It's just kind of there. It's one of those weapons that you use once in a blue moon and you have fun with it. And I think now, with the current state of Warzone and with it being one more week before the new season, I think this is probably the best time to use this gun, because, you know, we're kind of just trying to buy time for the new COD, for the new season. Like right now, if you're just trying to have fun, man, I think this weapon is definitely usable. It's not gonna put you at a disadvantage, and since I consider the OTS to be the best SMG at the moment, the P90 matches up quite nice against it in terms of stats. So on paper, the P90 isn't that bad. Now, obviously, on paper and in game are two different things. So in game, it like doesn't necessarily reflect what is said on the stat sheet. Happens all the time. Happens for all these weapons. Like, most of these weapons could have a certain stat that makes it very, very favorable, but then you start using the gun and it's like, man, all the other things just isn't good enough to make it that weapon. That's what the P90 is. P90 on paper it's pretty solid. Matter of fact, it's the same damage as an MP7, and you guys saw how dominant the MP7 was at a time, but the P90 never really was. So there's always something about these weapons that just, I don't know, they never really get the time to shine. But again, the P90 is definitely a good weapon. Obviously not like #1 SMG stuff, but definitely good enough to be up there with the gun like the OTS, or at least compete slightly with it. Not surpass it, but just compete with it. But anyways, man, with that being said, let's get into the OTS and stats. And here we have the recoil pattern for the OTS. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but I do believe that the P90 is slightly better than the OTS at range. If you take into account the damage, fire rate, and just overall accuracy, I think the P90 definitely has a slight edge over the OTS. And I'm not saying that the OTS is necessarily bad at range. It's pretty decent, but the damage drop off, the fact that it has 40 bullets, and the fact that it did get a recoil nerf if you open it to go just doesn't really make it the most, suitable weapon at range, and especially versus a gun that has no recoil. Does have low damage at range, but not as low as the OTS, and it's just faster. Like, I mean, come on, bro. I think it's a no-brainer because on paper it's just better, and in the game it definitely feels better. But I will say this. Although the OTS does have a 40-round mag, the P90 just has 10 more bullets. But the one thing about the P90, and I'm not sure if people feel this when they use it, but see, look, normally when I use a gun, right, when I reload, I cancel out the animation by sprinting, but like, it still fully reloads. Like, if you reload a gun, right, and you just play out the whole animation, it takes a little bit, like, a few more seconds. But what I like to do is cancel it just before I gotta, like, do the whole animation, and I still keep the 40, like, I still reload my gun, but I, saved a few seconds. But with the P90, when I start to sprint, like, sometimes it doesn't fully reload, and so I start the reload animation, and I get to the point where I think I'm able to sprint out of it, and then I gotta do it again. And it's just very annoying. It reminds me of when Cold War weapons were initially introduced into the game, and you had to literally let all the animations play out, or else you would have to keep reloading. And it's just annoying because it's kind of like out of habit for me. Like, it's something that I just do unconsciously, where I just do it. When I'm in the motions, man, I just do it. I don't like think about it. It just happens. And when I did it, and when Cold War first came, or the Cold War weapons were first integrated, and I had to like consistently keep reloading because I just was doing that, it was just very annoying. I'm glad they finally fixed it though. And with the P90, I just got flashbacks to those times, and I was very annoyed because I would reload and then I would have to keep reloading. Oh, it was just annoying. But anyways, man, let's move over to the stats. So for the first stat that we got is the fire rate. So for the P90, we have a 905 RPM, and then for the OTS, we have an 855 RPM. And I know that the difference isn't the craziest, but it's still an advantage for the P90. And to be honest, the P90 having a 905 fire rate definitely surprised me. If anything, I thought it was going to be kind of like the Bullfrog's fire rate. So for it to have this is pretty surprising. I can see why it's, capable of just keeping up with these SMGs. Now, I will say this, both of these weapons definitely do excel in like the really close range setting. The P90, yes, that has range, but it's obviously better at close range, and the OTS is undefeated at close range. And so with that being said, moving over to the stats for close range, for the P90 for 0 to 12.8 meters, we have 40 damage to the head, and then 25 to the neck, chest, and stomach, and then 22 to the extremities. And then for the OTS, we have for 0 to 7.7 meters, we have 47 damage to the head, 31 to the neck, chest, and stomach, and then 27 to the extremities. So obviously, from 0 to 7.7 meters, the OTS is just gonna more than likely beat the P90. It just does way too much more damage. But moving on over to the 7.7 to 16 meter damages, this is where it gets a little bit interesting because this is where the P90 starts taking over damage-wise. So again, this is in the ballpark of the P90 range. Yeah, it gets cut off at 12.8, but for that range, for again 7.7 to 16 meter range, the OTS has a 34 damage to the head, 23 to the neck, chest, and stomach, and then 20 to the extremity. So already it's weaker than the P90. Now moving over to the longer range, the 12.8 meters and above for the P90, we have 32 damage to the head, 20 to the neck, chest, and stomach, and then 18 to the extremities. Now for the OTS, 16 meters and above, we have 31 damage to the head, 21 to the neck, chest, and stomach, and then 18 to the extremities. So towards the end there, it does kind of pick up. And just not every aspect, let's see. That's where it kind of just a toss-up. OTS and P90 are very, very close at those longer ranges. OTS has a slight edge in the neck, chest, and stomach, the same in extremities, but the P90 has a slight edge in the head. So like there's like a level of uncertainty between these two guns at those ranges, and at that point it doesn't really come down to damage, or it doesn't come down to fire rate. Like it just factors. Whether or not you're in a great position, whether you can catch someone off guard, whether you can hit enough bullets, like it just at that range, it just so much things play into that in a theoretical matchup between these two. Whereas other ranges, for example, let's go down the whole line. For 0 to 7.7 meters, the OTS is the clear winner at that range. But then from 7.7 to like 12.8 meters, the P90 definitely has the advantage. But then from like 12.8/16 meters and above, that's where it just gets kind of crazy. That's where the whole comparison just goes upside down. That's where anything can happen, and that just goes to show you that a gun like the P90 is very close to a gun like the OTS at least on paper. And in game 2, I definitely felt like this P90 was shredding at times. Not gonna lie though, they had those moments where it was selling me, but there was also those moments where it felt really good. And with that being said, let me know what you guys think about the P90. Do you guys think in its current state it could ever be a just top 5 SMG, or do you guys think it would require some like huge buff for it to like just even get talked about more than it is now? And also, man, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, let me know any other guns that you guys would like to see showcased. Right now, again, I want to do the theme of just underrated weapons. Weapons don't really get used much anymore, but please make it a usable weapon, man. Don't give me some trash weapon. I need a weapon that's somewhat usable and is able to have a, you know, a case for to be able to compete with some top guns in the game at the moment. But yeah, man, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later, and I'm out. Peace.